Hello, writers and readers. I'm freelance fiction editor Miranda Darrow, here with my weekly show about writing, editing, a writing life. This month, we're talking about true crime inspired mysteries. So if you're a writer looking for writing tips, check out last week's video for tips and tropes and common themes. This month, I'm shining a spotlight on a subgenre of mystery, those that are inspired by the true crime nonfiction genre. But these are fiction books that are true crime-esque. First, a few gateway shows. In case you're trying to picture the subgenre and you don't know what I'm talking about, think about these TV shows and movies. First up is Only Murders in the Building. It's a comedic look at a fictional true crime drama. Aired 4 seasons on Hulu with our intrepid trio of podcasters, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, who share a love for true crime podcasts and then start their own to cover a murder that happens in their New York City condo building. And it's delightful. It's got a good mix of humor, but then also mystery and intrigue, and they're just so great together. Similarly, a light-toned show featuring a podcast is on Peacock streaming service called Based on a True Story, with Kayla Cuoco from The Big Bang Theory. It's a couple bored with suburban life start a podcast about a local series of crimes, and then they realize that they know the killer, and they talk him into appearing on their podcast incognito. What could possibly go wrong? Then we've got a movie that was on, I think, Netflix called Hitman, featuring Glenn Powell. And this was based on an actual event where a college professor back in the 70s became a police consultant and was asked to pose as a hitman to entrap people looking for murders for hire. And then he falls for a potential customer. And then the most recent one that I saw was on Apple TV Plus called Blackbird, that was also inspired by a true story, following a man sentenced to 10 years for guns and drugs who makes a deal to cut his sentence if he's able to get close to a fellow prisoner whom the authorities thinks is responsible for a whole series of murders of young women and girls, and he needs to cozy up and get into the mind of the killer to gain the killer's trust and learn the truth. All right, so now that we've got in your mind what I'm talking about when I talk about true crime-esque fiction, let's tackle some novels. First up is the wildly popular Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. A podcaster tries to solve a cold case and teams up with the girl that everybody thinks is responsible for her best friend's murder years back. Back then, on the night of wedding, the disgraced girl showed up covered in her friend's blood with no memory of what happened. We have an unreliable main character, a murder podcast, and a thoroughly engaging mixed media format in this fast-paced and suspenseful thriller. I particularly recommend the audio version if you are a fan of audiobooks. It was very well done. Next up, a historical, All These Bodies by Kendare Blake. Set in the summer of 1958, a gruesome killer plagues the Midwest, leaving behind a trail of bodies that are completely drained of blood. The main character, Michael, is an aspiring journalist whose father happens to be the town sheriff, and he never imagined that the bloodless murderers would come to his backyard. Not until the night that the Carlson family was found murdered in their home. Marie Catherine Hale, a diminutive 15-year-old girl, was discovered at the scene, absolutely covered in blood. She's the sole suspect in custody. Michael didn't think that he would be part of the investigation, but he's pulled in when Marie decides that he, Michael, is the only person that she'll confess to. So as Marie recounts her version of the story, it falls to Michael to figure out what is the truth. What really happened the night that the Carlsons were killed? And how did one girl wind up in the middle of all these bloody bodies? Next up, The Stranger Upstairs by Lisa M. Matlin is a mix of gothic, mystery, and horror. Sarah Slade is starting over. As the new owner of the infamous Blackwood house, a scene of a grisly murder-suicide, she's determined that this is the fixer-upper that she needs to help reach her new blogging audience for her successful lifestyle blog and distract her from her failing marriage. But as Sarah paints over the house's horrifying past, she knows better than anyone that a new facade can't conceal every secret. And then the builders start acting erratically and experiencing bizarre accidents, and Sarah knows there's only so long she can continue to sleep in the bedroom with the blood-stained floor and ignore the mysterious footsteps that she hears in the attic. Get out! Next up, The Three Deaths of Willa Stannard by Kate Robards features sisters Willa and Sawyer Stannard, who are bound by the ups and downs of their life with their mercurial single mother. When Willa is found dead in her apartment from an apparent suicide, Sawyer knows that it's just not possible. A cryptic note from the acclaimed broadcast journalist leads police to rule out foul play. Shattered by grief and obsessed by the idea that her sister's death was not a suicide, Sawyer plunges into a search for the truth. Next up, True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. Zoe Nolan, a 19-year-old Manchester University student, walked out of a party and was never seen again. 7 years later, struggling writer Evelyn Mitchell finds herself drawn into the mystery. Through interviews with Zoe's closest friends and family, she begins piecing together what really happened that night in 2011. But where some versions of the events overlap, aligning perfectly with one another, others stand in stark contrast, giving rise to troubling inconsistencies. Next up, 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. This captures the podcast as a method to solve a crime movement. 10 years ago, Jess's mother was murdered by the Magpie Man. She was the first of his victims, but not the last. Now Jess is the star of a YouTube reality series, and she's using it to catch the killer once and for all. The whole world is watching her every move, including the Magpie Man. Watch out, Jess! Okay, next up, The Appeal by Janice Hallett. This one's interesting because it's epistolary. Told through a series of emails, texts, and documents, this novel invites readers to solve a murder mystery alongside the characters, mimicking a true crime investigation. I like the epistolary touches, the emails, texts, as readers are pulled into the investigation and sift through the clues themselves. And we couldn't forget None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. A woman becomes the subject of a true crime podcast after her mysterious disappearance, with the story unfolding through multiple perspectives. Celebrating her 45th birthday at her local pub, popular podcaster Alex Summers crosses paths with Josie. A few days later, Alex and Josie bump into each other again, this time outside Alex's children's school. Josie has been listening to Alex's podcast, and she thinks she might be an interesting subject for the series. Josie's life appears to be strange and complicated, and although Alex finds her a little unsettling, she can't quite resist the temptation to keep making her podcast, and she needs a subject. Slowly, she starts to realize that Josie has become hiding some very dark secrets, and before she knows it, Josie has inveigled her way into Alex's life and into her home. Next up, a duology of YA bestsellers that got made into a streaming service, The Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and its sequel, Good Girl, Bad Blood, also by Holly Jackson. Pretty and popular high school senior Andy Bell was murdered by her boyfriend, Sal Singh, who then killed himself. That's what everybody thought. But then 5 years later, Pip sees how this tragedy still haunts her town. Pip can't shake the feeling that there was more to what happened that day. Pip, knew Sal when she was a child, and he was always so kind to her. How could he have possibly been the killer? Pip dives into the case, making a podcast on the murder, her finals project, and she discovers a trail of dark secrets that might actually prove that Sal was innocent. But someone in Fairview didn't want Pip digging around for her answers, and now Pip's life might be in danger. That's what happens when you dig around with somebody who got away with murder. Okay, in the sequel, Good Girl, Bad Blood, by Holly Jackson, the protagonist turns her previous investigation into a successful true crime podcast, but is drawn back into sleuthing when a new case emerges, blending multimedia elements with a traditional mystery. And next up, Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I love Ruth Ware. I love her thrillers and her mysteries. In this one, a nanny's dream job turns into a nightmare as she becomes embroiled in a murder investigation, with the story unfolding through the letters from prison. This after-the-fact story, told in letters to her lawyer, gives a true crime feel as readers sort through to discover the truth, and we're definitely dealing with a potentially unreliable narrator. And The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. An agoraphobic woman believes she has witnessed a crime in a neighborhood house, leading her to investigate despite her own limitations. This one reminded me of Rear Window, a nosy neighbor who inserts themselves into something amuck in their neighborhood. All right, that's my list of recommendations. My recommendations are all books that I've read and I enjoyed. Tune in to this YouTube channel next week when I'll tackle another writing topic. Next week's video are tips for writing an unreliable narrator. So if that interests you, make sure to check it out next week. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. I post new content on writing, editing, and the writing life every week. And this is Miranda Darrow wishing you happy writing.